Hello everyone, this is Shannon from That's So Po, and today I'm doing week 21 of my 2020 reads. This week I read quite a few things, all of which really made me think, plus I wanted to tell you about a couple of other things. The first book that I finished this week was To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers. This is a science fiction novella that was nominated for both the BooktubeSFF Awards as well as for the Hugo Awards. And this is actually the last novella for the Hugo Awards that I needed to read for that category. So later on this week, I'll put up a video discussion of me and my husband Sush talking about all of the different novellas for the Hugo Awards this year and kind of what we thought and how we ranked them. So this book is about a group of 4 scientists who go on an exploratory mission to some far out planets and moons to kind of see what they're like, learn about the life forms on them, and also kind of just gather a lot of research. In this story, it's Earth, but in kind of an advanced point, but Earth is not doing so well, and the humans really want to explore the universe and learn from it. But there's also a big emphasis on what the responsibility is of researchers and how they should not damage the places that they go to. And so there's this idea in this book of somaforming, which is adapting your body to the place that you're going to. So rather than trying to transform the place itself through terraforming, you transform your body through somaforming. So if you go to a place that has a lot of gravity, you would modify your body so that you had thicker bones, these sorts of things. So in this novella, the scientists go to basically 4 different places to learn about the life forms there, and each one is very, very different, and the experience that the scientists have is very different on each one of these. The novella as a whole is very, very philosophical. So much of what this novella is doing is just exploring these ideas and these ethics of what it means to explore other worlds and what our responsibility is. I thought that this was a very beautiful, slow novel that really made you think. I really liked a lot of the just ideas that this book brought up. I don't think that necessarily the characters were so engaging or really that the plot itself was so engaging, but I did love the atmosphere. I love the world building because there were all of these different planets that were so very different from each other, and just the way that it made me think. A lot of people do have problems with the ending of this book, but I had no problem with it. I thought it was very in line with a lot of what the premise of the book was, which was just these kind of philosophical, ethical questions, and that felt very much in tune with the rest of the book for me. So overall, I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, and I think it's worth a read, but if you're somebody who cares a lot about how things end or cares a lot about plot and character, it may not work for you so well. Next, I finished They Called Us Enemy by George Takei. This is his memoir told in graphic novel form. He had a team of people who helped him adapt it, about his experiences as a young child in the Japanese internment camps. So this memoir I thought was really beautiful. It did such a great job of blending his experiences as a young child, just remembering playing with his brother and dealing with growing up in these internment camps, with sort of a historical basis and knowledge as an adult of what was going on. I learned a lot about some of the details of the internment of Japanese and kind of what the details of that human rights violation were, while also really getting a lot out of that very personal story, especially with George Takei's very positive outlook and political activism as an adult that blended in with all of this. I think that this memoir is great if you don't know much about the internment of Japanese Americans during World War II, but it also is just great as a story of George Takei's personal journey into political activism. He really focuses a lot on how important it was for him as an adult to discuss this with his father, who was very involved in kind of activism as well for the Japanese American community. So I really loved that very positive message that George Takei has in this about talking about the past, about kind of valuing everybody, standing up for people's rights, and acknowledging when things have been done wrong. So it's just a very beautiful story, kind of moved me to tears, and I just highly recommend it. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I finished was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. This was the group read for the Asian Readathon, and I was so glad that I was able to get a copy through my library before the month ended. This is a literary fiction set in the 90s in a sort of utopian-like small suburb in Ohio. And the story centers around a couple of different characters, but mainly around the Richardsons, who are an upper middle class white kind of perfect family who rent out an extra house that they have to Mia, who is a single mother of a teenage daughter, and she is an artist and very much kind of a free spirit who does what she wants to do, whether or not that's kind of what the system wants. Another storyline that's very important in this is another family who have adopted a young baby who is the child of a Chinese immigrant, and there ends up being a custody battle over who should have the baby. So much of this story really revolves around not just the relationships between these people in the neighborhood, but also about the power dynamic between these people. So there's a lot in here that's really looking not just at the characters, although the characters are very, very well done in this, but really at kind of the systems of power and race and class and privilege. So this was such a fascinating book to read after having read White Fragility the other week, because so much in this is about those in power who think that they're very open and welcoming and progressive and generous, being put in a position where their power is being challenged and often crushing those who challenge their power. So there's so much in this that really kind of talks about those systems of power and control and supremacy that I got so much out of. I really, really loved all of that discussion and all of the sort of morality and ethical questions and questions of how we build our systems and what we buy into, and when push comes to shove, how we actually act. There was just so much in here that was really, really fascinating, so much to analyze. I think that there have been plenty of people who have talked about this book. It's well known to be just a really great book. So I don't know that I need to do like a separate review of it myself, but if I feel inspired, I might do one just kind of analyzing this through the lens of White Fragility, because I got so much out of that as my own personal experience. So I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I think that it is really actually quite good. It's great just as literary fiction where you're engaged in the characters and in who they are and how they're getting on in life, but it's also just great as an analysis of society. So I highly recommend this one. Okay, so those are all the books that I've read this week. If you've read any of those books, if you have any thoughts, any recommendations, anything like that, go ahead and leave me a comment down below. I also wanted to mention 2 other things. The first of which is that Ashley from Don't Have a Degree in Reading, whose channel I will link below, and I did a discussion about White Fragility, which is a book that we buddy read the other week. So that discussion is now up on Ashley's channel. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, I will link that video below. Ashley did an amazing job of editing our video and making our conversation coherent, because the discussion that we had definitely was quite a bit longer, and she managed to compact it down into just such a great video. I really enjoyed watching it, actually. It was so much fun. So anyway, I recommend that. Please check it out if you haven't already and you're interested. The other thing I wanted to mention was that over the weekend, WisCon happened, and this is a feminist science fiction and fantasy kind of speculative fiction convention that was held online because of the pandemic this year. I've never been to it in person, but I'd heard about it from Njeri at ONYX Pages, who I will link below, because she's gone and done vlogs about it in the past. So I really enjoyed catching some of the different panels that they had, and in particular there were some really cool discussions, I think, especially I liked there was a discussion about decolonizing SFF that was so cool with Rebecca Roanhorse on it, just talking about how fiction can be used to create narratives that, one, center people who have been marginalized, and two, create new systems and new ways to think about creating systems that are not oppressive to people. And I really enjoyed that. So if anybody else attended WisCon this weekend, go ahead, let me know what you enjoyed about it below. I'd be very interested. And I hope that you guys had a great week. Anything you want to tell me, go ahead, leave a comment.